I welcome you here in Doha. We meet today within critical circumstances with the escalation in the occupied Israeli Palestinian territories. And in Israel, we had deep conversation in this regard, and we discussed the political, humanitarian complications of this situation. We have reiterated Qatar's situation regarding hitting and targeting the civilians, women and children.
In today's news, Qatar seems to have grown weary of Benjamin Netanyahu's approach in Gaza. The wealthy Arab regional power appears ready to confront Israel following the country's refusal to agree to a ceasefire, ending a bombing campaign that has resulted in the deaths of thousands of civilians, journalists and aid workers. Reliable reports suggest that Qatar has drafted a resolution to impose financial pressure on the United States, Britain, the European Union and Israel. This impending sanction will involve a reduction in the U.S. military presence in the country and restrictions on the export of gas to Western nations. It could also mean the end of the Israeli political strategy that has used Qatar to prevent the unification of the Palestinian government in the West Bank and Gaza, potentially leading to peace between the two factions and the creation of a Palestinian state. In fact, the World Bank has issued a warning that any attempt to disrupt the current level of oil flow into the global market could lead to a significant increase in oil prices, potentially reaching an all-time high of £127, or approximately $157. The bank also warns that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could result in higher food prices if it continues. This marks a significant shift for Qatar, which previously played the role of a mediator in the conflict that began after Palestinian fighters staged a counter-offensive in Israel, unfortunately leading to the death of many innocent people. Now let's delve into today's update. To ensure that others watch this video, please like and share it with your family and friends. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future content.
We say enough. Israel should not be given an unconditional green light for killing, and we cannot ignore the occupation and the siege. We cannot accept in this day and age to allow using water, food, and medicine to be used as a weapon against an entire people. We are callers of peace, and we adhere to the international resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. We reject the killing of all civilians from any side, but we do not accept the double standards and to act as if the lives of Palestinian children do not count or matter. What is happening is very dangerous, and it violates all laws and...
Qatar has consistently acted as a mediator since the Gaza crisis began. The country has hosted both Israeli and Hamas leaders in an effort to find a lasting solution to the crisis. Qatar has played a vital role in providing humanitarian aid to the suffering people of Palestine. In fact, Qatar communicated to the U.S. its willingness to reconsider the presence of Hamas in Qatar once the crisis is resolved, to secure the release of numerous hostages held in Gaza by the Palestinian militant group. The wealthy gas-producing nation has also been crucial in negotiating with Hamas for the safe passage of Americans stranded in Gaza and the opening of the border crossing with Egypt to allow humanitarian aid into the enclave, which is under an Israeli blockade. All of these efforts were made to encourage Israel to agree to a ceasefire and alleviate the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. However, as Israel rejects a ceasefire and insists on continuing its mission to completely dismantle Palestinian freedom fighters.
כוחותינו פועלים בכל הגזרות ובכל העוצמה. ניצחוננו יהיה חד וברור. הוא יעביר מסר לאויבינו, מסר שיהדהד לדורות. המטרה של אויבינו היא השמדת מדינת ישראל. ואני אומר לכם, אני הבהרתי שאנחנו ממשיכים בכל הכוח.
Qatar has decided to take more stringent actions against Israel and its supporters. On the surface, Netanyahu's decision to continue hostilities may seem rational, but it raises suspicions that Israel is intentionally escalating the Palestinian situation as a pretext for dealing with Gaza. This speculation appears to have some basis, as Israel seems to be targeting innocent women and children rather than focusing on combating Hamas. It appears that there is a deliberate strategy to prevent the Palestinians from ever having their own state. The gas-rich nation has a range of options to exert pressure on the West and Israel. Firstly, Qatar, which has sent over $1 billion to Gaza over the past decade and provided construction materials after infrastructure was destroyed in previous Israeli wars, could decide to facilitate the reconciliation of the opposing Palestinian governments in Gaza and the West Bank. This action could effectively dismantle Israel's strategy of keeping the Palestinians divided to prevent a two-state solution on the peninsula. Qatar may choose to enhance its military and trade cooperation with Iran. The country maintains strong ties with Iran, with which it shares an underwater gas field in the Persian Gulf. When several Arab states severed relations with Qatar for several years over its regional policies, Iran came to Qatar's aid. Consequently, Qatar could align itself more closely with Iran, a rival to the United States and Israel. This could lead to a challenging situation in the region, potentially necessitating the expulsion of thousands of American troops stationed in the country. Such a scenario would likely be a geopolitical disaster for the United States and the Western world. Qatar could also leverage its economic strength to exert pressure on both Israel and the West. It might choose to follow in the footsteps of Saudi Arabia during the 1973 war, when Saudi Arabia imposed an oil embargo that severely impacted the economies of Western countries. As a wealthy gas-producing nation, Qatar could decide to limit its oil supply to the world. The result would be a surge in oil prices and a significant increase in inflation worldwide. This approach could prove to be an effective way to compel countries that are unsupportive of the Palestinian cause to reconsider their stance on various occasions. If Qatar were to pursue this path, it would compound the economic challenges faced by Western economies in the aftermath of the Russian-Ukraine crisis. Since the onset of the war, oil and gas prices have risen, and Western countries have experienced economic downturns. These nations have learned the extent of their influence during times of crises and conflicts. As an Arab economic superpower, Qatar might mobilize other nations to collectively take action to penalize the West and emphasize the value of human life, regardless of nationality. Qatar could potentially realize the concerns expressed by the World Bank. If the Middle East crisis escalates, the World Bank has warned in its quarterly report on the commodity market that oil prices could experience a significant spike, reaching as high as $147 per barrel. The bank also cautions that the ongoing war could result in higher food prices if it persists. The report additionally highlights that oil prices have increased by only about 6% since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas conflict, while prices of agricultural commodities, most metals, and other commodities have seen minimal fluctuations. In its commodity markets outlook, the organization has outlined 3 risk scenarios for the Israel-Hamas conflict, drawing from historical episodes involving regional conflicts since the 1970s. The least disruptive outcome would involve a reduction in the global oil supply of 500,000 to 2 million barrels per day, leading to price increases ranging from 3% to 13%, within a range of $93 to $102 per barrel. This could potentially trigger another round of economic instability worldwide. The intensification of the conflict could also prompt other Arab nations on the sidelines to demand accountability from Israel and its U.S. supporters. In a recent incident, an Israeli airstrike on an ambulance convoy near the Al-Shifa hospital in the besieged Gaza Strip claimed the lives of 15 Palestinians and left 60 others injured, as reported by the Ministry of Health in the Hamas-governed enclave. The convoy of ambulances was transporting critically wounded patients from the Al-Shifa hospital to the Rafah border crossing with Egypt when it was targeted in an Israeli attack, according to Ashraf al-Qudra. Qatar has responded with grave concern and has even threatened to halt any form of normalization with Israel, indicating readiness to impose further sanctions on the country. Please support our efforts by liking and sharing this video with your loved ones. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay connected with us for future updates. Until we meet in our next update, Assalamu alaikum.